This episode of UDSP is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to receive a free audiobook, just head on over to audible.com/GameBreaker. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's been a while. It's UDSP WildStar Show, episode 46. It's June 8th, 2014. Weird day, Sunday. We're doing shows on a Sunday. And game is launched. So we're going to talk about launch, how that went, how that's going, and see what everybody's up to. Joining me this week, as always, a little under the weather, but hanging in there with his WildStar shirt, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui. How are you, sir?
Yeah, like you said, a little bit under the weather, but I'm still happy. You know, first UDSP post-launch, it'll be good. Yeah, we have so much to talk about.
I know, this is first post-launch UDSP. So, joining us as well, Mr. JKK, Justin Kennedy, joining us to talk about some WildStar this week. How are you?
Doing good. I'm not sick or anything, but I have a feeling Farhan's just stayed up all the whole time playing. That's why he's sick.
That's what it is. It's too much. Just don't like, you know. Just don't pass out one of those like internet cafes, like playing like 9 days, didn't eat, didn't drink, and all of a sudden like died. Those are the worst stories. All right, so it's first show post launch. It's out. It's finally here. Head start, all that good stuff. Where do we even start? I'm just gonna kind of guide the ship here and just let you guys let her rip. And you guys kind of went through more of it than I have. I've been pulled away on a crazy project, so I've had a bit of a limited time on the WildStar. I have played some. But it has been limited. So let's. How did just the official? How did Head Start go? Because that's kind of, for people watching this show, that's the launch, right? Like if you're watching this show, you pre-ordered it. It really came out the day they did Head Start. How did that fare? Any problems? Any glitches? Any downtime?
Yes. It was not the perfect MMO launch, unfortunately, but it wasn't all that bad, I don't think.
But at least it's communicating that it is an MMO. Because if it had a perfect launch,
it is definitely
okay.
An MMO. Yeah, I mean, so they did the whole 3, 2, 1 bind tweet where they were counting down the server's launch, and nobody got in for the first hour because the authentication server just couldn't handle the load. Just everyone was hammering them. No one could get logged in. And then other people were thinking like maybe it's because of the authenticator. What's going on? But yeah, they were hammered for that first hour.
So it was mostly from what we know is mostly the authenticator server, the server that.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone even got to character creation at that point. They just couldn't even get in for that first hour or so.
Yeah, that was the initial problem, I believe. I think some people also had problems with their authenticator just not working for them, and that may have just been the server situation, or the email wasn't attached correctly when they were trying to set it up, so they were all screwed up. So that was. Do we have any idea what
would have happened if you just didn't use an authenticator? Like, what if you disabled it?
I know that a couple people in Pharos, the guild that I was leveling with initially, didn't have authenticators and they still couldn't get in. So it wasn't only an authenticator issue, but it's just that. So the way that the authenticator works, and this is like a little bit of a gripe that was really only a problem when you're trying to spam log in, and it's not really a problem any other time. But you get your authenticator code, and they don't let you type it in. Like you have to click on buttons to type in your authenticator code, and then to prevent like even mouse people mouse logging where you're clicking, the keys are randomized. So the numbers are like randomly placed. So then you're like on a timer trying to click in the damn buttons, and then you click log in, and then it fails, and then you do it again.
It starts with the authenticator boss. You got to beat the authenticator boss first. It's like the first mini game.
Yeah. But
all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so after like that first hour, so people started getting in and being able to create their characters, and then we got to the second big boss, which was the Q boss, which was definitely a problem on a lot of the PvP servers, especially like I think that some of the big PvE servers, Avitus and Stormtalon, probably had like some issues with queues as well. But the PvP servers, man, like I was really surprised, honestly, that they had so few PvP servers going into launch, just because like I think for North American servers, they only had 3 PvP servers total, and one of them had the same name as the beta PvP server, which was obviously going to be like a big overcrowded server. So I know that like Pharos and a bunch of other guilds were trying to avoid it just for that reason. Although tons of big guilds wanted to go to Pergo just because, you know, all the other guilds are going there, we should go there too. So they had over the course of that weekend, I think 16-hour queues. Some people even like have screenshots of like 3-day, like it says 3 days estimated time to log in to Pergo or something.
Now, is it true? I'm seeing people in chat room are talking about getting DDoSed as well. So was there reports of them also being DDoSed during the initial launch as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where that came from. I think that Jeremy Gaffney posted on Reddit or something saying that it looks like their servers were actually getting DDoS for that first hour or so. But I don't know. Like if it was a DDoS, it's sort of strange that it just suddenly started right when they did launch and then it ended about an hour later. Like I would have expected like an actual malicious attack to have gone on longer than 1 hour, but I don't know.
Well, if you have 100,000 people trying to connect to your game at once, technically,
yeah,
they're all.
That is a DDoS.
You're being did for the whole service.
One time.
All right, so flash forward. I mean, this is like the normal stuff all MMOs kind of go through. It sounds like it wasn't that crazy. An hour of kind of waiting to get in is actually pretty good, kind of. But let's talk about the game a little bit. I mean, now that everybody's in, you know, everybody's racing to 50, obviously, to try and get past all that stuff, and get to the raids and all that good stuff. But how has it been overall, just uptime and server time, like, you know, with just getting in and playing the game and actually staying, you know, in game? Has that been pretty good?
You know, like, ignoring the queue problem, like, because obviously that was a big issue on a lot of the PvP servers. Although I do want to say that I do commend them for actually somehow having server transfers up so quickly. Like, I think within Head Start, they had set up more PvP servers and other servers for people to transfer to, and they had like a within the game UI for people to transfer their character, and it seems to have worked very well. That people were able, that wanted to, got their free character transfers off of those really, really overcrowded servers. I think that they're still ongoing as well.
How many servers did they launch with? About 20?
Very few. It was actually pretty small. I was surprised.
I think around 22 total, but I don't remember exactly.
All right, so everybody's
the most
around.
surprising. Yeah, I think at this point there aren't really too many problems. Most people are able to get in. I'm not playing on Pergo, so I imagine they still have like ridiculous queue problems. I know that Pago, at some times, like in prime time, I have like about a half an hour queue, which is, I think, just fine. I don't really mind a half an hour queue all that much, but yeah.
I think a lot of people, though, overall, like getting in, once they got in past that initial problem, there hasn't been very much lag issue going on for most people, which I think is what's really excited people. They're getting in, they're not having a bunch of lag issues, and I think Carbine ahead of time thought about it and made sure that they were scaling up the number of instances per zone pretty high in the early days in order to help prevent that lag.
Yep, not too much of a lag issue, not too much of a like, oh, there are nowhere near enough mobs to kill or something like that. Like, I mean, there's been a few times where there's like a specific name mob that you have to kill, and you might be like in a little bit of a line for it. But because of like the share tagging and other stuff, like it's usually not that big a problem as long as everyone can get a hit on it on the next spawn. You're able to move on pretty easily. So
What's funny is like, so coming off the heels of playing Elder Scrolls Online, right, which is the last big MMO that launched, and still playing it, still enjoying it. Play it completely different though. How interesting is it of just being such a completely different experience between the two types of games, right? Like, so Elder Scrolls feels so much like a single player experience in game, and almost frustrates you to the point of trying to group up and play with your friends, which is what an MMO is supposed to be about. And then get into WildStar, and for one, I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't enjoy playing WildStar solo at all, but I extremely enjoy it playing with people. Like, it's just such a group friendly game, and I just have so much more fun actually getting in there with players. Did you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, I think it deals with the story largely. In Elder Scrolls, you go in there and you're so involved in the story yourself that it's going to feel odd anyways grouping up with people. But as much as I don't care for the WildStar questing system that to a huge degree, I don't like that huge tons of tasks and things. It's a perfect environment for just to get up with a group of people, just chit chat and talk while you go and run through zones and quests and everything like that. It's like it's almost like the lack of this focused story, lack of this focused visual story, allows you to actually group up with people and not have it feel like it's interrupting anything.
I think that one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've had so far with WildStar just playing is actually like getting in a group and then just sort of mindlessly running around the zone killing all the prime mobs, like because there's like 4 or 5 of us, and then we just kill these, you know, the mobs with the little reddish tint to them, and we're like coordinating interrupts and doing stuff and like trying to do things. We're like do like there's a bunch of like random 5-man boss mobs that'll just randomly be in an area, and you kill them and they give pretty good loot. They give pretty good experience as well. So just sort of going around doing that while just chatting and having a good time, it's just been a lot of fun, and like it just seems to go really well. Like I actually have made very good progress on my character doing that kind of stuff. You know, like some of the most enjoyable content in the game for grouping, obviously, is the dungeons and adventures, and I feel like they over-nerfed the experience and the like loot rewards that are coming out of those, especially.
That's something I've heard a lot about. That's a big conversation right now about them actually like making it a lot harder, and they actually seem to be nerfing content, or I guess you could look at it either way, but they're nerfing sort of like content loot drops and things like that to actually make it quite difficult to get bested slot sort of items and things like that throughout the game. So I've heard more than once that we've seen a patch since launch that has actually made the game even more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, the last couple patches right at the end of open beta and, like, right into Head Start, they increased the difficulty dramatically of the adventures, especially. They're actually, like, content. I feel like sometimes the adventures are even harder than the dungeons at times, which is a little bit weird. Especially like War of the Wilds used to be like such a joke. I mean, I'm not talking about veteran. I'm just talking about regular, like when you're at level 25 doing War of the Wilds. It used to be a joke, and now it's actually, I feel like, one of the most, like, it's not actually hard really, but it's just so long because all the mobs have so much health. It's like 200,000 health on those enemy NPCs, like the enemy player NPCs in the I'm talking about the MOBA like adventure. And it just takes a long time to actually get through it, and like it's very punishing. If you make a mistake, your character dies, you lose that medal, and then you're not going to get very much experience out of it. And the repair costs, like, you don't get much gold for doing these adventures and dungeons, but the repair costs are there if you're wiping at all. So, yeah.
So would you guys say then that some of this stuff that it feels like almost, you know, because a lot of people are praising the game for its difficulty, and saying that they're very happy that the game, you know, especially in an MMO, has actually brought some challenge back to the genre, and they're actually, you know, especially when it comes to rating and things like that. But at the same time, it sounds almost to me like some of this stuff, I mean, just turning up the amount of hit points something has doesn't really necessarily make it more fun just because you have to whack on them longer. So do you feel like some of the scenarios are just kind of like they're tuned almost too high and sort of like just to kind of take up your time rather than actually like engagement? I actually
think that a lot of like the HP buffs specifically were sort of like a workaround, like last minute, like, oh crap, we have bugs in some of this, because there were some bugs in beta where people actually like got really good at the content, right, because they had been playing it so long in beta. And especially like the people who were capped at like level 20, 25 for a long time, they kept running those dungeons over and over again. And so they got really good at them. And you got to the point where your DPS was so high that bosses were like screwing up their phases, because they would like start phase 2 at 75%, start phase 3 at 50%. And they'd be like mixing stuff together and be like this crazy bug that would just like screw up the instance or screw up the boss fight. And so they were like, okay, we need to spread out this encounter a little bit more. What's the best way to fix the bug on a short time span? Let's just increase the health. And I feel like that was a little. It doesn't really help, you know, new people who are just going in there, don't know the encounters as well, or don't have very good gear, and, you know, who are just going through it, and then they're just in this really long boss fight or something like that.
I think part of the reason with you going along here is that people wanted to level up through grinding adventures and dungeons and stuff. Some of them wanted to do that as like an alternative way to gain this extra experience. And now they feel like, based on the changes they made, they sort of nerfed the amount of experience you can gain. They feel like it's slower, and as we know, MMOers will find they decide, even if it's not as fun, they want to go the fastest way to get to 50.
Exactly.
So they forgo what they want to do because they don't feel like the rewards themselves are good enough for them to do that. They're just still kind of like putting it off until later now so that they can grind their way to 50.
Yeah, I just think that if they just increase the experience reward for doing it so that it's actually like a viable alternative to doing like questing or even just prime mob farming, like what I've been doing a lot of, it would just be a lot better, right? Like if you actually got significant experience for doing an adventure, what's wrong with that? There's really no reason to want to prevent people from actually leveling up significantly in dungeons and adventures. I don't know.
Let's talk about for a minute, like a lot of the things that a lot of the chatter we had on this show pre-launch was things like UI and communicating like properly to players, like how well the game, like, you know, how easy it was to play and stuff like that. How do you think that all turned out? I mean, the AMP system, the UI got redesigned kind of, you know, pretty close to the end. We saw it a little bit in beta and things like that. But how does everything sort of feel? Does everything feel cohesive at this point for launch and pretty much good to go?
Stuff feels pretty well connected. We still have some bugs with the UI that's causing a few issues here and there, such as you can't see what your potion is, but it's still there. You can still use it. And sometimes things just don't appear or it disappears. But for the most part, it's definitely much better than what it was previously before this UI. And for the most part, everything actually feels like it's part of one thing as opposed to pieces put together.
Yeah, I would say that the quest tracker still, like, it didn't get the revamp that it needed. It's still really not that good, especially like in the early zones. In the later zones, you actually don't get as many quests at the same time, so it's not as big of a burden, like scrolling up and down through the thing and keeping track of which quest is which. In the quest tracker early on, when you have like at times 12, 13 quests in your quest log, it's just mind-numbing because it's like where is which quest? They're sort of getting cycled together because they're trying to organize it for you. They're trying to say, okay, here's a world story quest, and then here's the episode that it's associated with, and then here is the actual quest, and then the quest objective. Like there's this tree structure to it, but it's confusing because you just want to know, okay, what about all the quests that are in this area? I'm more concerned about the area, not so much about your story structure.
You don't want to inefficiently just start running all over the map and doing a bunch of things.
Exactly.
You kind of want to like do things around in that area and then keep moving on. That's exactly kind of about where I am, and I'm having trouble with this exact same problem. I've got so many quests right now, and it's like I feel like I'm traveling and moving around way too much where I could just be like kind of finishing an area. What do you think about the whole? Go ahead.
I was going to say, what I was doing is I was having to click on, like, I'd have 10 quests, and I'd click on each one and see which one was the closest, and then go to that one. So it would be nice if, say, if it auto-sorted itself and just at the top, whichever one was the closest.
Yeah,
well, to go to that one.
It's just it does actually do that, but it's within each category. So you still have world story quest and then episode quest, and that trying to organize it in that way at the same time as trying to organize it by distance is what's screwing it up. Like you can't do both at the same time and expect it to actually do that well. The other thing is that there's
what about add-ons? Have we seen any add-ons that kind of fix this for us? And I mean, that's obvious. They've really wanted to, embrace this idea
lines for you.
Yeah,
I know.
add-on.
Everybody uses that add-on.
Yeah.
I mean, in all actuality, we're talking about. Well, I don't know the name. I can't remember if you guys know the name of it. You can shout it out. There's an add-on that basically
AYTH_quest or something like that.
Is that the one that puts the little dots,
the
little dots of going to take you to your? I mean, really, actually, how different is that from just clicking on the quest log and it gives you an arrow in game, so it's not really that much different.
Well, it actually is pretty different because the arrow that you get, it only points you to like the general area where the mobs are. It doesn't actually point you directly to each and every individual mob. Yeah.
But that's the thing with a lot of these games. For a lot of the players that want to use that stuff, the game is for a lot of players. I've been watching a lot of Towley streaming and things like that, and is this race to 50 and race to get to rating because for them, that's the game for them. They want to raid. They don't really want to quest. Questing is completely just a grind that it's something that they have to get through. But they wish they could magically click a button and just jump to 50 anyway. So that's really.
Well, that's like there's the add-ons. There's that quest checker add-on. There's auto accept quest add-on. So if you just go up and click, it goes through everything, accepts it. There's the Simon Says add-on that does all the Simon Says puzzles for you. There's an add-on that pushes the F key, I think, for all the little things that pop up, like push F at the time thing. That's all done for you. So you can get those. You can just get those add-ons if you want to super speed through things. You don't have to read anything. Just go through and shoot at mobs when you're supposed to.
Which is really the best gameplay in the game. Like, the combat. Like, that's the best stuff. So why would I care about Simon Says for the umpteenth time? Like, yeah, I'm going to use Cheat Simon. Sorry.
All right, there's a lot more to talk about. I want to take a quick break and talk about one of our sponsors really quick. So happy to have Audible on. They've been a sponsor for a really long time. If you guys have not checked it out, I want to hook you guys up with a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook. All you got to do is go to the URL audible.com/GameBreaker. That's the URL you're going to want to use. Sign up, make an account, and then you download the app. iOS, they have apps for all different devices: iOS, Android, Kindle Fire, all everything. Your iPad, and it's audiobooks. Audiobooks, download them. Something. Another little company kind of disrupted the WildStar week. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's the World of Warcraft. Yep. I'm sure a lot of you, I know you're playing WildStar and you're loving the WildStar, but a lot of you are probably World of Warcraft fans as well. This book is fantastic. The Shadows of the Horde book from on the World of Warcraft list here. You could download this as one of your free book just by going to audible.com/GameBreaker. Here, let's take a listen real quick.
That was his primary line of reasoning. The whispers and tutting from the two Chang sisters gave him further cause to hold back. The two of them were old enough to remember when Lu Lang had first departed Pandaria, or so they said. Though their fur ran much more to white than black, save where they darkened it around their eyes, Chen assumed they weren't quite that old. They'd spent all their lives in Pandaria, and very little of them in the company of those who had lived on the Wandering Isle.
So things are heating up in the World of Warcraft. Everybody's getting ready for the next expansion, and no better time than catching up on all the World of Warcraft novels. So there's a bunch of them over on Audible. Just got to go over and do a search for World of Warcraft. There's a bunch of them you could start at the beginning if you really wanted to, and some Diablo stuff and some StarCraft stuff. So, but I definitely highly recommend Vol'jin Shadows of the Horde. And like I said, all you got to do is go over to audible.com/GameBreaker. Use that URL. Sign up today. Sign up and get a free 30-day trial and get a free audiobook. So thanks so much for Audible for sponsoring this show of UDSP and the others here at GameBreaker. All right, so let's talk about, you guys were mentioning, you're talking about clicking through quests and things like that nature, and something, again, they kind of went this other route where, you had Elder Scrolls going this like very in-depth story route with these, voice-over quests and, really having that feel. And then you had WildStar going the other direction with this, I think they called it like the Twitter of quests, where they were going to do like 140 character quests, text and things like that. How do you guys find that? Because that's one thing for me. I do like my RPGs, and including my MMORPGs. I like to kind of get into the story a little bit. It kind of attaches me to any game in general. And that's the one thing I am kind of lacking a little bit with WildStar, is I find myself just not spending the time to even read the 140 characters because they seem kind of insignificant, and I'm just clicking through them and adding to my quest log and just moving on and doing something, which essentially now I'm just like going combat phase to combat phase to combat phase. Kill this, then kill this, then kill this, then kill this, then kill this. Like I'm and again, this is part of my own problem because I'm not taking the time, but I feel like I'm just overlooking the aspect of the story of the game. And I don't know if you guys are doing the same or how you feel, but am I missing out? Like, as it just feels like that's how the game wants me to play it.
I feel like for people who actually do enjoy the story and want to experience it, it definitely is there in a lot of areas. It's just not there in enough quests to actually make you feel like it's worth reading all of them, right? Like maybe, especially early on, like maybe 60% of the quests are just these random task quests that have just like a little bit of like environment building, maybe like, oh, Chuas are crazy, ooh, Arin are tree huggers, like kind of thing. It's that's all you get out of those quests, right? But like there are like I know in Elevar there is this whole like quest line that sort of follows, like it introduces you to the idea of Elden augmentation, and it sets up like this villain, and it does all this other stuff. And it has cutscenes in it. If you read through the quest, then it's actually like, oh, this is significant. Like, this is actually somewhat interesting. And, at the other end of the spectrum, like, once you get to the later, one thing that we didn't get to see in beta was these Drusera instances, like the solo storyline instances stuff. And I actually just got to the point where I got to experience the first of those today. And when I went into that thing, I mean, like, it was actually pretty good. Like, just reading through the story, it was like, oh, okay, a lot of the little bits of data cube lore and other things that I've been finding along the way, they start to makes sense. Like, okay, this is what they were actually doing. This is like a plan. It's pretty decently choreographed. The combat is like trivial in that first one, especially. I don't know if it gets harder later on with some of the other ones. And I'm not going to spoil the story, so don't worry about that. But just the combat itself, like the mobs that you have to fight during that thing, it was probably some of the easiest combat that I've experienced in the whole thing. So I understand why Pappy, Chad Moore likes it, because it is so easy that you could probably be like chatting in the thing and clicking on your abilities while you're doing it in order to actually finish it and still get the full experience. So yeah, it's good, but the story itself is actually really interesting. They have like some nice effects going on. They have like a lot of neat things. It's just that, like, why did they have to delay the story, like the main story stuff, to level 35? Like the fact that it's that
a lot of opportunities. They missed a lot of opportunities to put in even just a little bit of cinematics or a little bit of voiceover in certain parts. Like, I love going into the Exo Labs just because they're such a cool thing and they're wondering what's going on. But I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity just in the Exo Lab to try to give some background about what was going on there a bit more to people if they didn't that they could have gotten through audio or gotten through a little cinematic and stuff. That would have been just really cool to have in those, because there's a lot of them scattered throughout, and they're sort of like that background on the Elden, but you sort of end up running through them if you don't read it.
And a lot of them are actually like very skippable. Like, I mean, it makes some sense, like lore-wise, why this Elden facility isn't going to be like smack dab in the middle of the zone, except for like that one zone where it is right in the middle of the zone. But most of the time, they're off like to the corner, right? Like, I know that if you do the level 4 to 6 area on Dominion, the Crimson Isle, like there's an Elden Exo Lab there, but so many people don't even go into it because like it's very easy to just not go in it. There's not a single quest that even sends you into it, kind of thing. And like in Elevar, it's down in the bottom left corner.
So why would we go in there? Because I haven't, so I want to know why should I be going in there? What am I missing out of not looking for these little nooks and crannies?
There's a little bit better story in those. If you actually do read them, it's definitely a stronger story than most of the tasks you're getting outside of it. And you do learn a little bit about what's going on and what the Elden did on that planet. And it's also just a completely different environment. It's that sci-fi environment that you're not getting outside so much in some areas.
Yeah, especially that sci-fi thing that, it's some of the best story stuff that it's in WildStar is actually the stuff where they really play up these sci-fi elements instead of it being like really fantasy, really just like war kind of stories or something like that, just having the science fiction of it. The ship hands have, like, I still think the ship hands are some of the greatest content in the game because they're hilarious. They put you into these really funny scenarios that are just like straight out of Star Trek or out of Firefly or out of those other shows, and it's great. Like, that is some of the best content in the game, and I hope that a lot of people like check those out and keep doing them because they have pretty good rewards. They're a good. This is why I like ship hands. They have good story. And they actually can be, because they scale up to you, they actually have some challenge to them, and they give good rewards. It's like the trifecta of what you want for good content in an MMO.
Yeah, so you've been a really big cheerleader for them since you got to experience them. I haven't tried.
The name isn't great. Ship Hand isn't a great name, but everything else.
You wonder what it is. You don't even understand what it is, but it sounds really good. Let's talk about the combat. I mean, I don't think the combat changed a ton from beta, but as far as just dialing in combat and fun factor, I gotta say, I don't know of an MMO that launched with a tighter combat system. Like, it feels really good. And I always go back to what something you said, Farhan. I don't remember how many episodes it was ago, but you had mentioned saying that, for a lot of players, if you choose a class and you try it and you don't really like fall in love with it right away, like, make sure to try something else because they are vastly different. And I agree. Like, it took me a while, and I think Spellslinger, like, I didn't try it for a while, and then when I actually tried it, I was like, okay, this feels right to me. Like, Warrior just wasn't really my thing, and once I tried the Spellslinger and I was moving around a lot more mobile and jumping and things like that, like, it felt really good, and I loved the blink and all the different abilities that came really early on. So and I gotta say, like, man, what some of the closest, I hate to use the World of Warcraft reference here, but one of the things that you always suffer for early on from MMOs is like sort of the ability lag of just like, on input lag, basically on firing off abilities. And man, I don't feel it. I don't feel input lag at all. It's so dialed in, like, it feels perfect to me. I don't know. Yeah, it really feels responsive. It feels like you're actually in control of your character, which is amazing. And the telegraph system, for anyone who thought that this game was going to be easy, like, forget it. Like, I'm watching some of the veteran, like, you're watching some of the raid stuff that's going on. Forget it. If you think telegraphs were going to make this game easy mode, you're just wrong. Like, there's just no doubt about it. You're wrong.
You should see the telegraphs in PvP. It's just like, I'm looking at them and I'm just going, I don't know. Let's hope I dodge this one right here. Like, I can't tell. I'm just like trying to avoid everything with 100 telegraphs going underneath my feet.
The telegraphs in PvP is actually one of the, like, a little bit disappointing in terms of like what you can actually do, because like it's not the ideal like scenario that you think about when you see, oh, okay, everything is telegraphed, there's a lot of dodging and stuff, because like what is the most important stuff that you would usually want to dodge is like crowd control, right? And every crowd control is instant. So you can't ever dodge them. As long as they have you in their sights, you're going to get crowd control by those things. Which I don't think crowd control is too powerful in WildStar PvP. I think it's like just a little bit weak even, especially later on. But the telegraph in PvP it's actually one of those things that I like to set the opacity a little bit lower, and it's just sort of like a good guideline for, okay, this is where combat is happening, and it can tell you specific clues. Like if you see a really long, really thin AoE coming at you, then you know, okay, a spell slinger is aiming at me, and that's like all I need out of it. It's not like something that I'm gonna specifically try to dodge out of this thing. After that, like I just sort of stop paying that much attention to the telegraphs, and it's more like, okay, this thing. And then if I see like a purple AoE come up, then it's like, okay, they're healing each other now. Okay, so there's a healer around, and that's the only information that I get out of it then.
I also think it's more that it's not so much about voiding in PvP so much the specific telegraphs as it is like if you look at your opponent and you go, okay, I see a spell slinger over here, I see a medic over here. You know what type of telegraphs they have, so you know that that you can move around a lot more to avoid this person, or you need to get up close to fight this person or get away from them, and because their telegraphs are just, you can look at them and get, and if you remember, you get a basic idea of how each of the telegraphs are used and how hard it is for them to hit you, and you position yourself in accordance to that.
Yeah.
Faran, you came to GameBreaker through a show called Buildcast, we talked about like PvP and crunching numbers, and you are a PvP number cruncher. So now that it's out, I mean, I don't know, how are you feeling about it? How is the system stacking up? Like, does it, Guild Wars, you did Guild Wars 2 for quite a while, just drawing on some comparisons. I don't know, just let it rip. Tell me about, like, how are you actually feeling? Does it feel balanced? Does it feel right? Does the skills feel right? I mean, is it going to be really competitive PvP on the level that you and a lot of other PvPers have been looking for?
I think, that's like a lot of questions, but in terms of just like build, like what I enjoy personally in terms of coming up with creative builds and doing stuff, I think that PvP is actually one of the only places where WildStar, I feel like there's a lot of leeway in there, because when I'm doing PvP instances, I'm changing my scaling on abilities like a lot, like putting more points in this one, changing it in that one, and then seeing based on a group comp, like, okay, like, to give an example, I'm playing a warrior right now. And one of the things that's great about warriors is that they have like tons of utility. And like early on in just solo queuing in Battlegrounds, I was sort of going in and I just did my usual thing where I pump up abilities and for doing damage and I kill stuff faster, and yeah, great, very straightforward kind of thing. But what I realized very quickly is that for solo queuing into PvP, especially Walatiki Temple, that first Zerg that happens right in the middle, like at the mast, it always happens every single game. You have the Zerg that hits each other right there. Just bring defense grid. If you're a warrior, you bring defense grid, your side will win that first fight because your whole side is like taking 20% less damage than you do that. And so there's actually like little things that's, okay, I'll not have as much personal damage, but I'm suddenly buffing all of my team around me, and I'm able to do this stuff that like almost no one else is really touching. Like the really hardcore PvPers, when you come up against a pre-made, they're going to do it as well because they're coordinated, they're doing that kind of thing. But just like one or two players that are actually like not playing as selfishly will suddenly like just be this force multiplier for everyone else, and it suddenly becomes like you're just this wrecking force. So you like bring power leak, you bring defense grid, you do all this other stuff as a warrior. I at one point I was playing with a friend who's playing a spell slinger. Spell slingers are a pretty squishy class, but they have a lot of defensive utility to like get out of stuff, void, slip, and everything. But he was finding that he had so many of those things on his bar that he wasn't able to like, do a ton of damage as much as he probably could have. So what I did is I was like, okay, well, you're always able to do a little bit more damage than I am because you're ranged. I'll just bring Sentinel, and I'll be able to buff you so that if they start focusing on you, they'll start dying because of that, and you'll have increased armor and stuff. And then you just don't have to bring as many defensive utilities yourself. And so that kind of cohesion within a team, like trying to come up with these combinations of synergies, kind of things like that. Like when I was playing with an Esper friend, he has a knockdown, I have a knockdown. Because of the really harsh crowd control limitations in WildStar, like they have like the most insane crowd control diminishing return system that I've ever seen. You get hit with a type of CC, you are immune to that CC entirely for 10 seconds. Like you cannot combo 2 stuns into each other. You cannot combo 2 knockdowns into each other. So when I'm playing with an Esper, I don't want him to bring his crush, his knockdown, because mine is a much shorter cooldown. So just that kind of combination, thinking about that thing, I've had a lot of fun just trying to theory craft, trying to figure out what good combinations are, and doing that kind of stuff. Do I think that WildStar PvP is balanced or in a place where it can be very competitive right now? I think for Battlegrounds and maybe the larger scale arena, it'll be competitive just because you can actually do a lot with it. Like there's strategy that's beyond like single class balance stuff, but I don't think that the classes are that well balanced yet. There's like medics have like a really big problem. It's not the reason why I'm not playing medic, despite having been like a little cheerleader for medic for so long and writing guides and doing all that other stuff for medic, but it's just that I feel like the warrior has so much more to offer in terms of building group composition stuff, like bringing buffs for other things and doing other things. Medic is very one-dimensional in comparison to that, and their damage got like cut very badly, so Medic's it's a little bit rough for them.
And that's it right now.
Yeah.
You come in with the medic, you're hoping that medic is just playing healer, and they'll keep your team alive. It's like almost, it feels like it's impossible to die with the medic, but they can't do much more.
Like Espers have like this problem going on where I mean even the class developer for the Esper, like right before launch, sort of posted about it and said that we understand that there's some problems with that. There's like between like the lack of mobility and not feeling like you're rewarded enough for doing like not having that mobility and the things like they have really lackluster amps and things that where you just really don't feel like you're really gaining much. Like you obviously are getting small percentage increases by putting points in those amps, but it just doesn't feel quite right. Engineer has a lot of bugs with their amps, so they're like really struggling in terms of that. So there's definitely like stuff that needs to be worked out, but I actually have like a lot of confidence with the way I've seen other classes progress. Like the warrior has gotten so nice lately. Like I feel like, I mean, they still have their troubles. Like I wouldn't say the warrior is the best class in PvP right now, but I will say that I feel like it's improved quite a bit, and so like that gives me a lot of faith for their team being able to actually like take the current status quo and make it a lot better. I think that WildStar definitely has the potential to be a really balanced competitive game in the future. I just think that they need to look at crowd control and buffing it a little bit because there's too much interrupt armor everywhere, and it's a little bit it's not that meaningful having that crowd control right now. And
how are the maps? How are the maps coming into that as well? Like how's the cohesion between the sort of the group synergy that you're talking about between players and classes, and how you have to work together with your group as far as like bringing synergy to abilities? How does that also play into the maps? Do you feel that the maps are really well designed to also encourage that?
I think that the new Walatiki Temple is a lot better than the old one in terms of doing that. I think that there's a lot more potential for people to come up with good strategies. It's not as choke pointy where like, okay, everyone bring a bunch of engineers and they all just shoot electrocute down the hallway and then everyone dies kind of thing. Like that doesn't happen quite as much anymore. And the maps have definitely improved a lot. I actually always liked Halls of the Bloodsworn quite a lot because I like how it's like there's a strategic balance where you send your team. Like, do we split across over here? Do we actually bring a PvP tank for once and actually just have him sit on top of it? I have a guildmate who is playing a stalker tank, and he never dies, basically ever. So he just sits on top of a node and will just smack people around all day, and he doesn't die, so he can hold that node by himself for a really long time. And there's maybe 3 people over there, and we can move some more people to the other side. I actually really like it.
I think Halls of Bloodsworn is actually probably the one that brings the most excitement and versatility of how you play it. Because you've got to go in there, and there's 3 different rooms, but every single room has to be played almost differently on how you decide to tackle it and stuff. Especially that first room where you're rushing to get to points at the beginning. So like you might come in with a team who's focused on getting that first room captured really fast, but you're going to have to react differently to the next 2 rooms because they're split up differently. differently. It's set up. It's just structured so much differently in design of it that you can't do what you did in the first room. So you have to come up with a team comp that maybe works for all the rooms or 2 of the rooms strong, and you try to fight out for the last one. You got to come up with those decisions. You're going to see a lot of people just playing it differently, from how fast they go at the beginning to how fast they're going at the end in that map.
And just even between the 2 maps, there's a lot of variety in terms of what you want for your build. Like like as a warrior, you'd always expect like always just bring leap, right? But I found like leap is like pretty much requisite in Halls of the Bloodsword, especially because in that second room you can jump between the 2 sides very easily. But in Walatiki Temple, I don't really need leap as much anymore, because I feel like, okay, with grapple and other crowd controls, if I coordinate with my team, I don't really need that anymore. I can free up that spot for like defense grade or something else that maybe is a little bit more helpful for me when we're trying to just quickly take a point and quickly do something. Because it's a much more fast-paced thing, whereas Halls of the Bloodborne, they're very drawn-out fights because you're fighting over an area for a long time instead of fighting over an objective that's moving around. So it's really nice that they're that different. I do miss Hotball, though.
God, there's still so many places we could still go with this conversation since it just launched. Really quick, another supporter of the show, and for you guys and girls, how you can support GameBreaker is support World of Tanks, and by going to gboffer.com/tanks and trying out World of Tanks. Completely free to play game. If you guys haven't checked it out, they've got a new 9.0 update. It's great. It's really awesome. A lot of fun. Totally free to play. Give it a shot. Put it on your desktop. Just go to gboffer.com/tanks, and by supporting us and going into that URL, you are directly supporting this show and GameBreaker. So we thank you. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. Talk to me about war plots. This is something I have not gotten to see, and I've been trying to watch streams in my spare time, like, downtime a little bit, and I have not seen anything really going on with war plots. Bring me up to speed. What's going on here? Are people focusing on them, or have you guys checked them out?
I think we're going to still have about a month or so before we even start seeing those regularly. I mean, you need 40 people at level 50.
we don't really quite have the critical mass to do it yet. It was a few days ago, so I'm sure that it's gone up from now. But like, I think about 3 or 4 days ago, I saw a Reddit post from Jeremy Gaffney where he said that like 0.3% of players reached level 50 already, which is, I thought it was like a lot, but it's kind of high. Still, it's not that much to do war plots regularly. So yeah, not quite yet. I haven't seen it.
Do you guys see that as being a big part of the game, and something that really kind of grows into a big thing, or is it more like a little bit of a side thing that people will engage in sometimes?
I think it's actually interesting that from what I'm hearing from a lot of people who are mainly PvE, they're actually much more interested in war plots than they are battlegrounds arenas. They don't want that closed up space instance combat there. They like this idea of this bigger combat for them. And I guess because they kind of get that feeling that it's more like a raid just against people in that sense for the war plots. So it almost has a bigger interest in war plots than it does the battlegrounds for a lot of PvEers.
What do you think, Farhan? Are you looking forward to it?
I definitely want to experience it a little bit, but I don't think that it's something that I'm going to get into as much, because I like the really competitive stuff, like the arenas kind of thing, a little bit more small scale. And I don't feel like my personal contribution to a war plot is as significant. I do really like the idea of the base design. Like, I think that I'll probably get into that and the strategies and the meta and all, trying to figure out all that kind of stuff quite a bit. But in terms of actual gameplay, I think that it'll be fun, just because like going in with a bunch of people is fun, and talking on chat or on Mumble or whatever and trying to get everyone organized is interesting, and it's like fun to just yell at each other over the voice comm. But in terms of actual gameplay, I think that I'll enjoy the arenas and battlegrounds a little bit more.
Would you guys agree? I mean, would you guys agree that this might be one of the most feature-rich MMO launches that we've seen almost ever, as far as just various different types of content? I mean, I think we take a lot of the systems and things for granted in other games like that have been around for 10 years and things like that. But I mean, the PvE, PvP, war plots, housing, raids, ship hands. There's so many layers that they actually launched with. I don't know. Would you guys say that did they live up to the hype?
I would say a year ago, I was one of those people who were just like, it's not possible to launch with all this stuff. You need to focus as for developers and stuff. Like, and then not even just about WildStar, just about in general for MMOs. And now I'm looking at it and going, okay, they did it. Like, they somehow came out with all this different type of content. And for the most part, I don't see the issues with it. It's playable. All these different types of instance gameplay, all this open world stuff to do, all this for PvP, for PvE, for raiders, for people who just want to play around, housing. It's kind of crazy and how feature rich they put it in and managed to actually launch with it.
Yeah, I just think back to like 9 or so months ago, like UDSB, like in the teens maybe kind of thing, and we were like getting upset about them pushing back their launch date from last year, because it was supposed to come out last year, like winter, right? And then it's like, oh, they're pushing it back, and like they had this little like post about like, okay, this is our philosophy, and we think that we really want to go back and touch on a lot of these systems. Man, am I glad that they delayed the game. They were able to, and I mean, like, to be fair, a lot of companies don't have that luxury, right? They have the publisher pressure, they have whatever other kind of thing that they can't do what they want to do and just delay it that much longer. But man, am I glad that they delayed it those 9 months. That this was a great launch.
Well, I think that's where actually having NCSoft did help them here. NCSoft was probably looked at it and said, EA forced SWTOR to launch early without features. Boom. It dropped pretty early. It's just NCSoft's just sort of like, we'll keep funding you, get all the stuff you say you're going to have, put it into the game, and go with it. And I think it's actually doing pretty well for them regarding that.
And I mean, it's, of course, we're MMO players, and I'm going to ask the question already. So when's the next big patch? What's coming? What do we got? What's coming up down the road? So
supposed to be a 28-day cycle.
Yeah, it's they said that it's like 4 weeks. Give us a little bit of leeway room in case something happens. Maybe it'll be 5 or 6 weeks sometimes. But they did say that the first patch, like first drop, is supposed to happen this month. Like within the first month, it's supposed to happen, which gives them like what? Like we have 2.5 weeks or so that they have to actually get it out there.
And what do we anticipate those types of patches to be including?
They said from everywhere. They're almost like they're trying to focus on a certain area each time for a patch. So it might be a new adventure one time, or a new dungeon the next time, or a new ship hands and stuff, or more solo experience, or more in-game world events. They're like kind of just rotating throughout each of the patches and what they're focusing on. Which I guess, think. Go ahead.
I think that this next upcoming patch is actually a whole nother zone of content in the game, like an end game zone for people to do, like with public events and other things going on in them. So yeah, that should be really cool to see how it comes out and how polished it is and how hopefully bug free it is.
Well, I think from the way they announced it, it actually makes sense that they do focus different areas each time, because they're almost giving that. So whoever's designing adventures, if they have, if they launch a new adventure, say this month, I don't think they are, but if they did, then it may be 3 or 4 months before it comes back around to that next patch is going to have an adventure. So they got 3 or 4 months to develop that next set, so they can focus on that over those course of the months, while the other groups are releasing their stuff each month.
Now, one thing that Jeremy Gaffney actually said, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but I think what he said was that he expected the public test server for that first content patch to be up like 6 to 7 days after launch. And we're at, what, 5 days now after launch? Like official launch day, Tuesday, not like head start day.
It feels like it's been a lot longer. I was going to say 5 days. It is only 5 days after launch, so you're right.
So that might be in like the next couple of days. We might see the public test server go up.
Cool. No one's going to drop their characters for the first week to go test.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to test that? Let's say, they already have the character transfer service working, so maybe people will be able to actually just check out like that in-game zone if they already have it working within the game UI, which is actually really cool. I like that you don't have to go on to WildStar, like their website, because the website's always a cause of problems. so not having to go through the website to do something is really fun.
Faran, I know you came from a pretty extensive World of Warcraft background. I mean, if you could sort of sum up, like, how do you think we got to make the comparison, right? I mean, I think everybody hates to do it, but we got to do it a little bit. I mean, What do you think it does better? What do you think it does worse? What do you think they need to work? Like, what type? Is it the same type of player? Is it what is it off? What is WildStar offering the World of Warcraft player that they might be missing from WoW at this point? You know, a lot of WoW players I think are in transition right now, waiting for the next expansion. Blizzard trying to disrupt the hype this week as well with the alpha launch. They're so good at that. They're just so good at disrupting anything. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, was it the launch day? Was it the launch day?
No, it was exactly 1 week after launch that they did it.
Well, 1 week after.
Which is good. Like, that makes even more sense. Like to wait 1 week afterward and then do it.
It was 1 week after early access.
Early access launch.
And then they launched
which
alpha.
During early access, they gave you like 2 times or something on favor or whatever for that entire weekend anyways. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, double valor or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when Blizzard decided to launch the alpha for the next expansion for Warlords of Draenor. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think it offers WoW players? I mean, obviously there's a lot of crossover here. There's a lot of similarities, you know, even being sci-fi. I mean, man, it's even like the quest turn-in sounds. Something I got to tell you really quick. Just total side note. Have you guys been to Disneyland?
Sure.
Have you guys been to the haunted house? The haunted house, the cart that you ride through, and like, you know, this. Is it not exactly the same voice when you die? This tombstone that talks to you. It's the haunted house from Disneyland. It is the same damn thing. Now everybody's gonna go to YouTube and go listen to that. I'm gonna find
voices,
it. I have to go listen.
On the side note of the voices that talk to you in the game for random things have to be the most hilarious things. The taxi driver, when you die, when you go to activate a portal, he just gets mad at you like, fine, just activate me or whatever. It's like, you gonna die again? Or he just gets on you. It's pretty funny.
All right, let's go back while I'm looking for the haunted mansion ride so I can play this because it's just brilliant. It's just exactly it. I don't even know if
so what does WildStar offer to WoW players, I guess? I think that WildStar it's a good opportunity to get away from Azeroth if you're a little bit tired of it. Which is what I am, right? Like I loved World of Warcraft. I love the lore in WoW. I was like one of the people who actually like read the lore and knew about the Titans and all that other kind of stuff and got really into it. And I liked the PvP and WoW. I liked other stuff, but I think that the combat in WildStar is just it's a lot more enjoyable for me personally. Like I like being a lot more active with my character. Like I played a Death Knight in WoW from when they launched Death Knight onward, just because I felt like they had the most buttons that I was pushing and the most resources to manage and doing all that other kind of stuff, compared to like an Arcane Mage. I don't know, just to hate on Arcane Mages, I'll just do that. And you know, something that's very simple and you're just sort of going through, and maybe you have like some resource management, but it's not really that kind of thing. It's more mobile. There's more stuff going on when you're moving around doing the combat. So I feel like WildStar just beats WoW's combat a lot. Like
if the telegraph kind of system really just amped it up as well, has a lot to do with
it. The telegraph system, like the messaging is great. Like I feel like when you fight a hard boss in WoW, like unless you've read a guide or something, you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and then you're like, oh, okay, this person did something wrong or something. You spend so much time just hammering your head against a hard fight without really learning it, unless you're like a really coordinated, like a raid guild, like, you know, Blood Legion or whoever, who are actually like really good at learning fights and doing that kind of stuff. It takes a really long time. But in WildStar, like even like I've done a lot of pugging of dungeons just because I have like friends who are leveling a little bit slower than me, and so I'll just be like, yeah, I'll take the dungeon for you, whatever. And I hate typing out the explanation for the dungeon fight, so I just tell people like, okay, we're gonna wipe, but I just don't want to tell you the fight. We'll just do it, and you'll learn it, and that'll be a better experience for you, because I don't mind dying, kind of thing. And so we go into those fights doing those things, and people love it. Like they love like learning it, and they figure it out because it's like, oh, okay, that thing happens, and you see the exploding circle expanding on the second Calvareth boss, and so you figure out that, okay, it's hard to dodge between one layer and another. If you have a mobility move like a leap to just jump over it, then that's way better than trying to aim your dodge or something like that to do it. And people just learn that stuff really fluidly in WildStar, so you still have that experience of, you know, having a challenging encounter that requires you to like be sitting there at your keyboard doing like paying attention to the screen. I haven't once been watching a TV show while grinding in WildStar. I don't know how well it would work, but I did that constantly in World of Warcraft whenever I was doing the.
Well, that's something I think most MMOs are like, right? I mean, that's the funny thing we've been joking about forever. Is like, you know, we said the same thing. I always called it Feel Good Slot Machine. You could be doing like 8 things, watching TV, eating dinner, and playing like your MMO. It's so easy. You really can't do that with this game.
No, it's a full-on experience. You're doing it, and it doesn't. I don't feel like the dungeons experience in WildStar wastes my time. Like, I don't feel like the trash mob is just trash for trash's sake. There is just the right amount, and it's just the right amount of challenge in it that I feel like it's an engaging experience, and it's something that even the 3rd, 4th, 5th time through, I'm still enjoying it, trying to coordinate, still telling people, okay, you know, on the Dark Witch, you have to interrupt the Rupture. You can't let it go through. Bring a cleanse so that you can get the debuff off of it. Like, that kind of coordination, it's still happening even on the 4th, 5th time through, and I feel like it's fun. Like, that return to challenge is really nice. In terms of lore, like, if you were a WoW lore nut, like, it's hidden. It's definitely hard for you because, like, you have to actually read the quest line and do that kind of stuff, but it's there in WildStar. Like, the really cool lore is actually still there in WildStar. The story behind the Elden, what they're doing in there, it's really neat stuff. It's like, I would put it on the level of the Titan lore in World of Warcraft, which was some of my favorite lore in it from WoW. And I think that's definitely fun. In terms of PvP, I don't think that it's definitely not the same kind of PvP as World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was very much a CC timing, like, just wait for the right moment and then, you know, go kind of thing in PvP and coordinating that kind of thing, like CC breaks and all these buttons that you had to push at the same time. A lot of that has been sort of shaved off, and it's much more about the strategic aspects in the battlegrounds. In arenas, like, it's a little bit weak right now, I'll admit that. The World of Warcraft arena experience is probably a little bit more competitive just because you don't have that, like, moment that, okay, this is the defining moment of the match anymore. Like, instead, it feels like really spread out, especially with the way that healing is. But I think that they're going to be able to fix that. If they make crowd control a little bit stronger and they shave off some of those extra sources of interrupt armor, like, there's no reason for there to be an amp that gives protection probes, interrupt armor to everyone kind of thing. Like, it's just silly. Like, there's too much interrupt armor everywhere, and it's too easy to ignore that. If they take away some of that stuff, then the skill level for PvP will rise, and I think it'll be a really fun experience there. So, in terms of that kind of stuff, in raiding, I think that people will really love the raiding. Like, okay, 40-mans, I'm not even going to touch that because that's like, you know, if everyone is really opinionated about whether 40-man will be viable or not, we'll see, right? That's all that I'll say. We'll see what happens.
Still a little early to tell on that.
Yeah, but just the 20-man rating, even if you just look at the 20-man rating, I think it's really fun content. People seem to really love it, those people who did it in beta, and I think that it's definitely on par. Like, the raid designers, the people who are working on WildStar raid stuff, I think that they're on par with World of Warcraft raid designers. So I think it's there. I think that for somebody who wants to just take a break, obviously, if you have a community in World of Warcraft, if you have your guild, you're playing with them, you're probably not going to want to switch games because it'll be hard to get everyone to switch over. You'll be missing people, and that's what an MMO is, right? You're playing with a community, you're having fun with them, you're doing all that stuff. Don't switch. Just keep playing World of Warcraft, keep playing whatever game that you're able to do it with those people. But WildStar it's a new game, it's a really great game, and I think that it has a lot of potential, even just in terms of community. Like, we didn't really talk about it this much so far in the show, but housing, my God, housing. The potential for community to grow around housing is amazing. I've seen some people do such cool stuff with their housing, and already, like, I have a tiny little guild that I'm playing with right now, like, a lot, because I'm, like, trying to keep things a little more casual. I was gonna raid with Umbra, but because of some medical concerns, I'm probably not gonna be doing that anytime soon. So I've been playing a little bit more casually. But man, we have so much fun just dicking around in each other's houses, just messing around, like setting up cool stuff and being like, look at this cool hoverboard thing that we made, like, or look at this expedition or other kind of stuff, doing housing challenges, crafting, all of that stuff is in there, and it's so good that I have no reason to switch back to World of Warcraft because I'm having so much fun. And, you know, like, there'll be more than enough guilds that are open, inviting. You can find a guild that you'll have fun with in WildStar. It's not like you have to, you know, slug it out alone, because WildStar isn't that great of a game if you're playing alone. If you're playing it with a good guild that you enjoy, yeah.
GameBreakerNation.com. There you go. Little plug right there. I gotta plug the GameBreaker Nation.
Playing Exile. They're playing Exiles.
Hey, I'll give the GameBreaker Nation shit for that as well. I agree. I was like, what are you guys on? PvP or PvE? They're like PvE. I'm like, damn. You guys Exile or Dominion? They're like Exile. I'm like, damn. It's like both choices. I would have went both the other way, but I'm still playing. So yeah. So go to GameBreakerNation.com. It's like 170, 80 people in the guild. So if you need people to play with, there you go. All right, JKK, what are your thoughts though? Like, and we got week after week after week to dig into all the cool stuff and talk more about housing, all that stuff. So today we're just scratching the surface. But living up to the hype as far as everything, because you were not all that sold. You were not. You were a little hesitant on the WildStar for a while. You were a bit more in the Elder Scrolls camp, I feel like. And I don't know. I've been watching your Twitter, and I don't know. I see your little things pop up more than I thought I would have. Like, I'm playing WildStar right now. I'm playing WildStar right now. So you are logging in, I think, a lot more than maybe you even expected.
Yeah, the questing really turned me off, but at this point, I'm just having fun with PvP as much. I've got over 70 matches in from PvP, and I've leveled up. I've leveled up exclusively from level 12 to 25 so far on just PvP. I've done nothing but just queue up for PvP from 12 to 25 so far, and that's just really got me enthralled in it. And I want to do the adventures. I want to do the dungeons. I'm wanting to really do them, but I've almost I somehow got addicted to this idea. I'm just gonna level to 50 and then I'll go do the other stuff through PvP just to see if it's possible and how easy it is.
Well, they say it's possible, right? I mean, they say it's completely possible to go straight up through PvP.
It's fun.
What's going to be interesting for me is to see, like, you know, a little bit later on, like, how much is there? I mean, it's going to take me forever to get to 50. Let's be honest. If I get to 50, hopefully I get to 50. But I mean, I'm really still curious. And I know that they got a pretty much a hard line saying, like, you know, if you're not raiding, you know, it's pretty hardcore at endgame. So I do wonder what there is going to be for people who, you know, don't have the time or the means to put together 20 and 40 man raids of what they're going to do at endgame. So, but we got so many more weeks to talk about that.
Well, if it's actually like that first 35 one that I just experienced today, the solo instances that they said that, you know, they're going to be coming out with not every single month, but like, you know, alternating months maybe, or some months that they'll be, because they have a patch every month, but sometimes they won't have it, sometimes it will. But that solo story stuff, like, I think that it's very casual content, but it's really interesting. Like, there's a lot of cool special effects going on. They had like a lot of cutscenes. It has, you know, it's not fully voiced, unfortunately, but it does have like a lot of texting, which I think maybe it's better that it's not fully voiced, because I feel like that was something that Star Wars, like, remember how they promised us like those upcoming episode updates for like the stories and all that stuff, and then how well did that work out with having to budget voice acting for all that stuff? Like, yeah, so maybe it's better that it's not voice acted, but it's still really cool, interesting lore, and it's really casual content. Like, it was really simple to get through there and do it, but it was still cool. So I think that that's something that hopefully, like, if it's actually significant content and there's new zones coming out with public events and doing other kind of stuff, then hopefully there is that content for the single player solo players, because, you know, they did say that we're committed to creating content for everyone, just not all content will be for everyone.
Yeah, and those public events are actually a big focus for their in-game stuff. They said they actually call them post-cap events that you can only do if you're like 49 and 50, and they said those are going to be coming with all the zones and constantly doing them as well. So.
Or is it your imagination? And consider this dismaying observation.
Yeah.
This chamber has
similar.
No windows and
No doors. I'm convinced. The folks over at Carbine are very much fans of Disney. So every time I hear him, I love dying just to hear that voice. It's fantastic. Justin Kennedy, thanks for being on the show this week. Follow me at JKK Kennedy TV, and you're on Tweetmo as well, and GameBreaker, and a bunch of other stuff. So thanks for joining us this week. Why don't I next week and talk some more about some WildStar stuff? Maybe next week I can get you a lower third. Yay! Farhan Siddiqui, follow my Unindel, UNINDEL, and right here on UDSP. I'm the odd man left out without a WildStar shirt. Follow me, Gary Gannon. Follow GameBreaker TV, GameBreaker TV. And for the next few weeks, we're still doing shows live at odd, weird times. Looking like it might be Sundays, but it's either going to be Saturdays or Sundays. So just keep an eye on the Facebook, facebook.com/GameBreaker TV, or GameBreaker, yeah. And the Twitter, keep an eye on that. It's kind of up in the air right now, and then we'll get back to normal schedule next month. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Have fun.